Hi, this is Amber Parks with Writing with Design, and in today's session, we're going to be looking at closings and specifically information. So what we want to think about is closings are like the center of our palm. When we touch here, if you kind of wiggle all your fingers, see all your ligaments come together. This is what we want to think about with closing. So a lot of times you'll see students tap right here. And the goal of that is just to say, hey, these different ideas, maybe they were in bubbles, maybe they were in boxes on your design, but how are they all connected? What unites them? What's the thread that kind of binds them all? And that's what a closing is. Another way to think about it is a bucket, right? It catches all the sentences of the writing, all the details, and it's bigger than any one detail. So it has to be wide, it has to be deep enough that it catches all of the sentences, all of the ideas that were shared in the writing. So we're going to take a look at some closings for this particular little piece. So it's about bearded dragons, which, by the way, are one of my favorite classroom pet options. I used to have a bearded dragon in my classroom named Tanami, and she was phenomenal and such a great teacher for children about reptiles and just a really, really fun pet. So if you're looking for one, I definitely recommend bearded dragons. But back to the piece here. So a little bit of informational piece about this really cool animal. So we'll take a look at this, and then we're going to sort some closing options into really strong samples and then some non-examples, because while there's a lot of great samples of good writing for students out there in terms of different children's books or really well-written articles, there's not a lot of great examples of closings. Even really great books or great articles will not have much at the end of them to kind of pull it all together and to wrap it up. So closings are something that definitely need a lot of practice and instruction. And so this is a great opportunity to practice and work on that. So here's the piece. These docile reptiles have a third eye on the top of their heads that senses a change in light. This special eye helps them know when there are birds flying overhead that may be considering them for a tasty meal. As they spend their days warming on rocks and looking for crunchy crickets to chomp, they quickly scurry to safety if their third eye senses the shadow of a hungry flying predator. So a quick little piece just about the fact that these animals have a third eye, right? So we kind of want to get it just in our head of kind of what did we write about? What's the essence here? It's a protective third eye. It's not just a cool thing, look at me, right? It doesn't just make them unique, but it actually is a survival adaptation where they can sense shadows, and the only things that would be creating shadows over them might be clouds, but most likely it's going to be something flying overhead that is trying to see if they are edible. So from there, what we want to do is go into this classifying design where you see we've got two branches here of strong closings and then non-examples of closings. So I'm going to pop one up. Clearly, the bearded dragon's third eye is a life-saving trait. Is that a bucket? Does that capture all of the sentences of the writing? Does it connect all the ideas in terms of tapping in the middle of our palm? And yeah, the answer is yes on that one. It's a strong one. Okay, what about this one? Without a doubt, bearded dragons make great pets. Strong closing or a non-example? Yeah, that would be a non-example. And let's talk about why. Was the piece about pets? Especially, I mean, I talked about that at the beginning, so I didn't do that to fool you. but the piece itself was not about bearded dragons as a pet, right? That was just my quick little side note about it. But you could see how someone like me who might have a bearded dragon in the classroom, or maybe I have one at home, when I'm writing about bearded dragons, I could just quickly go to that as a wrap-up sentence that would be easy to do. But in this case, it would be a non-example because there wasn't anything shared about them as a pet. Everything was written about them in the wild. In brief, bearded dragons also blend into the rocks, making it difficult for birds to see them. Is that a bucket? Does that cover everything that we wrote about? No, it doesn't. And if we think about why, it's because it introduces something brand new. Nothing that we read was about camouflage. It was all about the third eye keeping them safe. So the idea that they also camouflage into their surroundings is really fascinating to know, but that was not the goal of that first paragraph. This sounds like it could be a second paragraph about another adaptation that keeps them safe. Without a doubt, bearded dragon's third eye makes them an exceptional reptile. Does that wrap it up? Does that tell you that it's a unique feature that makes them different? Yeah, that's a strong one. And unquestionably, the bearded dragons rely on the special eye to keep them safe. Is that the essence, that the eye keeps them safe? Absolutely. So you can see here we've got sorted closings here, 3 examples of strong closings, a couple examples of some not so great closings, and great discussion that came about as to why it is not a good closing. So families and teachers, I really encourage you to practice writing closing sentences. It can be for paragraphs from textbooks. It can be from articles that you are reading. It can be from magazines that you get delivered to your house, like Highlights magazines for kids is one of my favorites. It can be at the end of children's books in terms of if it's an informational book. How could we wrap this up? How could we wrap up this section, this entire book? Think about takeaway messages, because more often than not, there's nothing there. And the sense of closure that we want students to learn how to do when they write is so important for them to do. It is a part of rubrics for scoring writing across the country. So we know it's something very important, and sadly, there's just not a lot of great examples of it. So let's try this one. It's a little bit of a longer piece, I know, but it's about controlled burns. And in this case, we have an article here that talks about how fires, I'll just go ahead and read it actually, and that way we've got it all. So once people started settling the American West, they quickly put out any fires to protect their lives, their houses, and their livestock. As more and more people moved to the region, less and less fires occurred. This led to an overgrowth of trees, which prevented the native grasses from growing. The trees also gave an unfair advantage to predators because they could see their prey from their new high perches. Now, when a fire starts, it quickly becomes a massive, uncontrollable inferno that can ravage whole valleys, mountainsides, and any towns in between. So by putting out and preventing fires, the risk for massive fire destruction has become much greater. Knowing this, agencies are starting to burn sections of prairies and forests in the American West to help prevent fire outbreaks and mimic what used to happen naturally. Since the land used to burn every year, these controlled fires actually keep the ecosystems balanced. The fires burn more in patches and usually burn out themselves. This allows for native plant life to thrive, which ensures the native ecosystems stay in place. Residents are grateful too, because the controlled fires actually keep them safer. So from this article, we're going to do the same thing. So let's take a look at our closings here for one more set of practice. Do you think these controlled burns are helpful? Is that a good closing? It's not. And one big reason why is that we never end up writing in a yes or no question. It's just not a good sense of a wrap up. It doesn't give the reader a sense of closure. We want the writer to kind of not fill in every gap for us, but not leave us hanging either. It's just kind of like a to be continued at the end of a TV show that we've watched or a movie where we're like, come on, don't leave me hanging like this. So we want some kind of closure here. So just asking a yes or no question is not going to do that. Despite its destructive capability, the force of fire is indeed helping to restore and preserve the beautiful American West. Is that a bucket? Does that capture the idea of the writing? Yeah, absolutely. That's a really strong closing to say, what do we want in one sentence, right? Let's make the jerky version of the steak, right? Let's shrink it down. What is the raisin to the grape, right? How can we shrink down our message into one sentence? That is the goal of a really strong closing. In brief, these controlled fires are protecting and strengthening the prairies and forests. So many plants, animals, and people, excuse me, let me start that one over. In brief, these controlled fires are protecting and strengthening the prairies and forests. So many plants, animals, and people call home. Are they protecting? Are the fires protecting the area that plants, animals, and people call home? Yeah. All right, clearly these fires are destructive and must be stopped immediately. Well, that is a strong closing, but does it fit our piece? No. So the why it doesn't fit is this is the complete opposite perspective on this topic, right? So this isn't certainly a topic that could have different sides to it. And so this is one where, yeah, we could definitely use this closing, but we'd have to have a completely different body of the writing for it to fit. In brief, already 3 million acres have been burned as part of the controlled burns. That's going to be a non-example. And the reason why, it's just a detail, right? It's one more new thing. And sometimes our children will do this in their writing. So it's really important to know about this as a closing strategy that students do that isn't great. We don't want them to add a new piece of information. Nothing new in the closing. It should just be a recap, a takeaway, the bucket to catch everything. Given the tremendous benefits of these controlled burns, the ecosystems in the American West will once again thrive. That would be a strong one. Takes away or gives the takeaway message of that we want the ecosystem to thrive, that there's benefits, which is what the article that we read was all about. All right, so this is a quick look at some closing options. Feel free to use these as you're working on closing pieces, especially if you do the grit, guts, and grappling piece that we looked through with the shoes paragraphs. You could certainly model your closings for that after one of these that's in here. That's another video series that we did. And then just anytime you're doing an informational piece of writing, come in, look at these closing sentence structures, look at the non-examples, and use these to help you write your closings to your writings. We really want strong closings in any piece that we write, because that's the last message that our readers will hold on to. And we want to leave them with a great and impressive lasting message. Happy writing.